Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a city with just under 600,000 people. It's known for its breweries or multiple museums. Situated along Lake Michigan, it's the perfect spot for boating or kayaking. The city of Milwaukee is known for a lot of beautiful things. It's also known for its increase in crime every year since the year of 2011. For the most part, it's carjackings or property crime, but in some cases, it's physical. Your chances of becoming victim to a violent crime in Milwaukee is 1 out of every 68 people. It is truly a city that breeds tragedies. Tragedies like this next story. September 14th, 1999. The world would make way for Kiara Brown. She would be born to her parents, Kiara Brown and Martell Perry. The place she called home would be Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Kiara would be raised amongst 4 other siblings. She comes from a home that was great. They had good family values. Kiara and Martell were the type of parents to always put their children first, guide them along the right path, and hope things turn out for the best. In her early years, Kiara was the enthusiastic, bright smiling ball of energy. She was a loving person, someone who enjoyed the time with her family, a person who was smart, funny, well-mannered, but also unapologetically herself. Like everyone who walks this earth, the days of the innocent young years would quickly fly by, and before you know it, she was a high schooler at Vincent High School. In high school, she was known as the fun-loving friend, but not your normal high school acquaintance, someone who truly valued others. I want to bring you to the year of 2018, where Kiara is 18 years old. At that time in her life, things were hectic. She was getting ready to graduate. She was also getting ready to attend her last prom. And one of the biggest things on her mind at that time was making sure she chose the right dress. Kiara was just like any teenager getting ready to graduate. At that time in her life, she's anxious and also worried about her future. After all, she's about to step out into the world as an adult. And when you do, you bring along your dreams. But at this time in your life, they're no longer just dreams. It's about to become something that you can actually make a reality. For Kiara, her dreams were becoming a model, but also an artist. She saw herself as someone with her name in the lights. But like any other dream, it's no more than a wish. And what is a wish? It's a desire, something that your heart truly wants. But the truth is, if your heart really dictated your future, then this world would truly be a greater place. But that's not the case, is it? We live in a world where nothing is truly predictable. And for Kiara's family, in 2018, they would find this to be truthful. This would be the year where they would say their final goodbye to Kiara. And when they did, they didn't even know it. 2018 would be the year that the sun set for Kiara. In March of 2018, the beautiful sky would turn orange, and then purple, and then black. And before the birds could sing at first daylight, Kiara would be discovered deceased. And as the tale goes, nothing ever changes. It would truly be another reminder that those who are around you could also be a danger. March 26th, 2018. At approximately 5:30 a.m., police would be dispatched to 98th and Carmen Street. Around this time, a citizen was driving past, and they happened to notice a white Audi in an alleyway. The driver door was open, and from the looks of it, no one was in the driver's seat. The citizen then decides to walk closer, get a better look, and upon observing the vehicle, they would witness a female who was unresponsive. That civilian then makes a call to the authorities. The detectives show up on the scene, tape it off, and begin analyzing. When the final officer left the scene, they didn't have a clue as to what happened. All they know was they had a deceased female, and the suspect is on the run. The female would be positively identified as 18-year-old Kiara Brown. At this point, the authorities are faced with the hard task of contacting the family and letting them know that their loved one was no longer here. In normal cases, authorities have to look far and wide for a suspect, but that wouldn't be the case here. Miraculously, the next day after Kiara was found, someone would turn themselves in. On March 27th of 2018, Marvin Patterson would go to the police station and turn himself in for a crime. He would admit to the authorities that he had first-hand knowledge of what happened to Kiara. So, in that instant, he's taken to the interrogation room. At this point, the officers are elated. They have a guy who's willing to confess and they don't really have to do any hard work, but in that moment of glory, they would make a mistake. But we'll get to that later. At this time, Marvin Patterson is 19 years old, but the real question is, what's his connection to Kiara? Well, like in many cases, Marvin Patterson was the ex-boyfriend. He says that on the evening of March 26 of 2018, he went to pick her up. He would then explain to the authorities that he had been working 2 jobs and he saved up his money to get this Audi. That's right, the white Audi that Kiara was found in belonged to Marvin. He then tells the authorities that they were riding around and Kiara saw this weapon, so she decided to pick it up to take a picture with it. Marvin says he didn't think that this was a good idea. He knows that weapons are dangerous, so he goes to take the weapon from Kiara, but when he grabs it, he says it goes off. He tells the authorities that it was an accident, that she had grabbed his weapon to basically try to show off and things went south. But these weren't entry-level officers. These were seasoned detectives. So instead of taking his first confession, they kept going at him, trying to get to the truth because they weren't buying it. So they continue to question him, but his story never changes. He says that it was a complete accident. But although he says it's an accident, they still have enough to arrest him on suspicion alone, so he's taken down to the local jail and booked in. Whenever you're booked on suspicion of murder, authorities have anywhere from 36 to 96 hours to bring forth charges. If they can't, you're released. Luckily for the authorities, they would land a star witness, someone who would come forth and say they saw Marvin leaving from the scene. With the witness now in their pocket, they can charge him with first degree, so that's what they do. After Marvin is formally indicted, he would sit in jail for a full year before his trial even started. But when his trial started, things would go left. Something would happen that no one saw coming. A year later, and now 20 years old, Marvin would walk into the courtroom. At this time, this entire case is predicated on a single witness. Besides that, the prosecution has no other evidence. On this day, the prosecution's star witness was supposed to show up and say what they saw, but the prosecution's witness never shows up. With no witness, they have nothing. So the judge decided to release Marvin, but he wasn't released on bond. He was let out of jail on a mere signature. But to add insult to injury, the witness not showing up wasn't their only problem. I told you guys earlier that during the interrogation, they made a mistake. Well, guess what that mistake was? They didn't Mirandize him properly. And without Marvin being read his rights, anything he said before that can't be used in court. The judge at this point has no other choice but to throw out his confession. What happens now? We have a grieving family who's waiting on justice. At the same time, we have a guy who was just released from court. But to make matters worse, when they return to court, the prosecution has nothing. The star witness is gone and his confession is thrown out. So what are they gonna do?
Milwaukee teen remembered by loved ones for her kindness is shot to death. Her accused killer let go on the basis of a signature.
Fox 6 reporter Casey Cronus outside the Milwaukee County Courthouse, where an unexpected development unfolded earlier this week.
Ted and Steph, a grieving mom, walked into the courthouse behind me for what she thought was the start of a trial for the man accused of killing her daughter. Instead, that man left without handcuffs, and now this victim's mom is pleading for justice.
She had a beautiful smile. Her smile was awesome.
More than 1 year has passed since Kiara Brown buried her daughter Kiara.
I look at it every day.
Still, this mother's pain is as deep as ever.
That's what I have to face every day, that my daughter is not coming back.
Last year on March 26th, the 18-year-old was found shot to death in a car near 98th and Carmen. Authorities say the next day, Marvin Patterson, 19 years old at the time, turned himself into police. He initially confessed to the crime, then changed his story.
It's hard when justice doesn't want to serve you.
Patterson was charged with Kiara's murder, but on Monday, the same day his trial was set to start,
I got a slap in the face.
the state's essential witness failed to appear. With no alternative theory of prosecution, Patterson was let go on the condition that he promises to reappear for his next court date.
You have to understand the consequences of when you do something, especially take a life.
Heartbroken beyond words, Kiara says she is devastated her daughter's accused killer isn't behind bars.
She was my oldest, and oh God, we were so close, like so close. That's why it hurt so bad.
Kiara Brown, remembered as a bright light and a beautiful soul.
She was my best friend. It will never be another, never.
Marvin Patterson's attorney declined to comment on this case. In the meantime, Patterson is required to wear an electronic monitoring bracelet and is not allowed to have contact with Kiara's family. He is due back in court next month for a status conference.
Time passes and once again, everyone mobilizes for court. But this time it's different. Instead of the prosecution walking in confident, they would walk in broken. A team that was once seeking first-degree charges have now allowed Marvin to plead to a lesser charge. Part of this plea deal is Marvin telling exactly what happened. So he gives his story. On March 26 of 2018, Marvin Patterson would go to the home of Kiara Brown. He says that he wanted to surprise her. I mentioned that he worked 2 jobs so he could buy that new white Audi. He then says that while they were hanging out, he would jokingly raise his weapon and then point it at Kiara's head. He says that in that instant, the weapon went off. When you sustain an injury like that, it doesn't take long. He says that when he realized she was gone, he panicked. He then drove the car into that dark alleyway and left her there. That's right. Marvin Patterson has now changed his story. With his initial confession being thrown out, his lawyer decided to go another route. Marvin Patterson would ultimately plead guilty to homicide by negligent handling of a dangerous weapon. And with his guilty plea, he would await his sentencing. The time has come. It's Judgment Day for Marvin Patterson. For taking the life of Kiara Brown, Marvin Patterson would receive 10 years in jail with only 5 to serve. But hey, I guess who am I to judge, right? It was an accident. At least, that's what Marvin said. What do you guys think? I really want to get your feedback in the comments. Do you believe that this was an accident? Or do you believe that it was cold and calculated? But before you answer that question, I want to make you aware of something. At the time of her passing, Marvin Patterson and Kiara Brown had been broken up for over a year. At this point, Kiara had moved on. And when I think about that, I think about one more detail. That before she left this earth, Kiara was extremely worried about the dress she was picking out for prom, which hints towards the fact that she may have moved on and she wanted that night to be perfect with someone else. But again, that's my opinion. It's pure speculation. Because in the end, the final pages have been written and the true story won't come out unless Marvin decides to tell it. Be mindful that this case happened in 2018, and the year is now 2025, so I'm sure that Marvin is somewhere out there walking around as a free man, all while holding the truth to what truly happened to Kiara. It's a sad story, right? And at this point, it's all too common. Rest in peace, Kiara Brown. Thank you for being a light for others. I truly hope that your family gets the answers that they deserve.